Good morning, everyone. If you can hear me, it's a bit disconcerting speaking, I know, with the silent disco. So if someone in the crowd could give me a nod if they can hear me, brilliant. Okay, so thanks for being the first people to come for this first session of Speakers Corners. Today we're going to be talking about a really interesting piece of work and something a little bit left field for Make UK when we're working on robotics and autonomous systems in the West Midlands. So this is a problem right across the UK. We were approached by the West Midlands Combined Authority to say, well, we want to work with you and we want to come up with what are the barriers to adoption and why aren't we seeing what is a heavily industrialized region, the West Midlands, adopt robotics at a rate perhaps commensurate with what we're seeing with our partners and competitors over the pond and in Europe as well. So we thought, well, that is an interesting problem. There's no real first-party data for this challenge. So we set about undertaking that. We want to see, how prevalent robotics and autonomous systems are within the region, but also we can use this as a bit of a case study for the wider UK, because we know on a UK level, robotics adoption lags behind our competitors. So we, as a sort of industrial heartland of the UK, it'd be a fantastic litmus test to understand what these levers are. So that's why we went about it. The WMCA wants to approach us and say, we want, because you guys, are close to manufacturing, want to understand what these challenges are and what levers we could use as local government to help remedy this. Ultimately, it produced quite a large report on the back of some first-party research, where we found actually adoption was quite high, much higher than you'd expect, at about 80%. Of manufacturers in the West Mids suggested that they use RAS in some shape or form. But when we dig a bit deeper, it's quite surface level stuff. So if you have that thought, gosh, 80% are all using really advanced end-to-end systems. No, it is normally as individual piece or one-off that sort of satisfies that requirement to say we have some form of RAS in our business. What's quite interesting, and perhaps you would expect that, but this data sort of hadn't been understood before, if we cut out all the big players and we go down to just SMEs, that number drops to about 48-50%. So quite a drop down in terms of that prevalence. Now, one of the main findings as to why RAS isn't adopted as widely as perhaps we're seeing across the pond and in Europe is cost. But the cost is not necessarily different between in the West Midlands and across in Europe. It's a lot to do with the subsidies and pro-investment policies available to companies in other regions that aren't the UK. There's a little bit of variance. We saw a part of that work about Made Smarter. We're seeing the rollout in the Northwest, but not quite. The national rollout's not quite there yet, but predominantly that wasn't the challenge. Actually, the second biggest challenge to the lack of its adoption was around vision, which I know is a bit of an ethereal term, but it's vision at the leadership level about whether this is a valuable investment to make, and less so about the cost, but more so about what the pathway would look like and the benefits from any potential productivity gains further down the line. A really big challenge, though, within it all, which is a hard one to offer a solution to, is what we found, is that in the UK we have a lot of, for lack of a better word, middle value chain manufacturing, and a lot of that's quite bespoke. And so when we went and a lot of the case studies to talk to a lot of MDs around the West Mids region, we found that it'd be quite hard for a lot of these processes to be on a sort of automated basis or have robotic lines, given that it's almost on a per contract basis, a lot of the workflows that's going on within these businesses. That's a harder problem to solve. There are, of course, smaller, more deployable RAS deployments that would work within those environments, but you're not going to see that large scale change, and that's something that is fairly unique to the SME manufacturer space within the UK relative to other major manufacturing nations is just how bespoke and in the middle of the value chain that UK manufacturing lies. But coming out of this, and I'm probably coming to the end of my 5 minutes before I introduce Mike Wilson from the NTC, who's heading up and leading the upcoming now West Mids cluster, which I'm sure he'll talk about more. It's about the findings of what we found from this after all this work to accelerate that adoption, and it came through clustering and knowledge hubs. So where finance is a serious issue for SMEs, the big issue was vision and understanding, and that is a hole that we can solve. That is a hole that through clustering and through working together with public-private partnerships is addressable, and we found a strong route to do that. And to talk more about that, I'd like to introduce Mike Wilson from the MTC.
Thank you, James, and good morning, everybody. As James said, the UK faces a number of challenges related to the use of RAS, robotics and autonomous systems technologies. We currently lag in terms of our adoption. We're 23rd in the world, and as the 12th largest manufacturing country, we ought to be a lot higher than that. But we're also very poor at exploiting the great research that's taking place in our universities, and we need to find ways of doing better at these kind of technologies. And one of the things that we've identified is fundamentally the community is just not very well connected. The users, the suppliers, the academics, we really don't find good ways of ensuring that all these parties actually talk to each other and also work together. So we've looked at other countries. We've tried to find out how other countries are doing it better than us. And one of the first places we went was Denmark. And you kind of think, well, Denmark, that's not a big player, but Denmark actually has got a robot density. They've got more than twice as many robots per head of working population than we do. And in Odense in Denmark, which is one of the first robotics clusters, they've actually spawned a number of global businesses. So Universal Robots, who developed the collaborative robot, actually originated in Odense, and there are other businesses that have been created there. So it's a great example of what can be done by getting people together on a regional basis and getting more of that communication and cooperation underway. More recently, Pittsburgh is a great example of what can be done successfully. Pittsburgh has developed a robotics cluster. It's brought in over $6 billion worth of investment. It's creating thousands of jobs in the region, all about robotics. So we look at all these examples and we kind of think, maybe we should do something like that in the UK. And we picked the West Midlands as a good place to start. Now, to be fair, the MTC is based in the West Midlands, so there was a little bit of bias in terms of geography, but also within the West Midlands, we have a strong infrastructure, strong community already in place. It's just not very well joined up, as I said. So we've got some very strong universities already operating in the robotics space with Birmingham, with Warwick. We have two of the high-value manufacturing catapult centres, both ourselves as the MTC and WMG. We also have the the UK headquarters for a number of global robot providers. So Fanuc, Schneider, KUKA, for example, are all based in the West Midlands. We have a strong systems integration community. We also have some very good skills provision, both in terms of what MTC does, what Make UK does through our apprentice programs, and we also have a number of strong users, not just Jaguar Land Rover, as you might expect, but also other companies like Castings PLC, like Mondelez. So we've got all of that infrastructure already in place, but it's just not very well joined up, as I said. So we've now created the West Midlands Robotics Autonomous Systems Cluster. This was founded by the MTC and the University of Birmingham, working together, leading that group. We have a steering committee which represents all of the different players in the sector, and we're now getting together, building events to try and connect that community. So we've already done events on electrification, we've done events aimed at SMEs, we're now working on an event specifically around the medtech sector, because in the West Midlands that's an important area of activity, and what we're looking to do as an example is join that community with the robot providers, the robot developers, so we can make sure that both of those communities talk to each other, and in the West Midlands we develop that kind of capability so we can exploit it going forward. And fundamentally that's what it's all about. It's about just joining this community together, getting people in a room, talking to each other, building the opportunities for cooperation so that we can develop a strong focus on robotics autonomous systems in the West Midlands. There are other clusters now developing in other parts of the UK, and we are cooperating with them to ensure that we can all learn the lessons together. But basically, we're hoping that this will give us a new spur to much greater development and adoption of robotics within UK industry as a whole, but starting in the West Midlands first. So if there are businesses in the West Midlands that are interested in this, please come and talk to us. If you're outside the West Midlands, by all means come and talk to us, because we might be able to point you at other clusters that would be relevant. but please, we're calling on the audience here to come and talk to us, get engaged in this community, and let's build a UK successful robotics sector. Thank you. And I should add, if I've got any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you. Cheers.